Ticket number 16860. Option to delete aux function is not coming up. So if we come to Instrumented Systems, we come down to a CIF and select an auxiliary function. If we come to Edit Tools, we now have the option to delete auxiliary function. And that's now been successfully deleted. Ticket number 16854. Operate maintain issue when a regular user tries to log a failed test event. So if we come to SLM and the system module, we're logged in as an administrator. If we filter for our Sprint account, we can see here it's a regular user account. So if we log out of the admin account and log in as a regular user, we come to operate and maintain. We select a test group, then record the test event. Let's now step through the workflow and record a fail with dangerous failures. Let's select a CIF. Let's select an output for the tested device. Select our tested CIFs. Enter some failed function data. Select our failed output device and enter failed device data. Click Next for the past device data and now click Save. So we can see the event has been scheduled to process. Let's have a look at the background task. We'll wait for that to finish. That's now finished. We can now see our recorded test event, which was created with a regular user. Ticket number 16845. Show gap value in scientific notation if it's bigger than 2 decimal places. So if we come to the HAZOP module, we come to HAZOP study and the facilitation template, and we come down to this HAZOP deviations and scenarios table. If we scroll across, see the results gap value, we can see it's in scientific format, 1.68 e to the negative 6. Ticket number 16823. Cause and effects matrix logic change. So previously an interlocked may have had an output which serves as an auxiliary function on a CIF. And if this is the case, in the cause and effects matrix we see it listed twice, once as an output and another time as an auxiliary function, which is highly unnecessary and was causing confusion. So we've added a new group, auxiliary function, which was created underneath each function, for example a CIF. The auxiliary functions were converted into outputs and assigned as children of the new auxiliary function. So these new or existing, if matching an object ID, outputs were linked back to the main function. So the cause and effects matrix now avoids displaying duplicate columns for repeated outputs. So if we have a look at this screenshot, previously we could have had an output and an auxiliary function with the same ID reference. So if we now come to SLM, inside the operate and maintain module, inside this CIF function, we can see the auxiliary functions group. If we expand that group, we can see the auxiliary functions were converted to outputs and assigned as children of the new auxiliary function. So if we come to the Instrumented Systems module and select the cause and effects matrix, we will no longer have any duplicate IDs. Ticket number 16832. Add approval cycle for LOPA. So if we come to the global module, we'll come to the Clampit Enterprise level and we come to the Enterprise Approval Policies template. We now have the LOPA study and the LOPA worksheet rows here. If we come across to the Beverly Hills facility, we've changed this option to yes. If we then come to the personnel module inside the Beverly Hills facility, I come down and select my name, come to the Approval Authority tab and Manage Approval Authorities. We'll select all of the units, and you'll see we have two new rows in here for the LOPA study and the LOPA worksheet. I've set myself to primary approver for both of those rows for all of the units. So if we now come to the LOPA module, we come to a LOPA study, we can see that we now have the LOPA study approval template, and I can come in here and self-approve, for example. If we now come to the LOPA study template, we can see that this is locked for editing because it's been approved. If we come to one of the worksheets within that LOPA study, in the summary tab, we can see that it's locked in here for editing as well because the LOPA study has been approved. Ticket number 16844, SIF response time not automatically calculating. So if we come to the Instrumented Systems module, we select a SIF and come to the Performance template. The SIF response time here should be calculated by adding the sensor detection time, logic solver processing time, and the final element and actuation time. So now, if we change any of these three values, it should create an overnight task to update the SIF response time. So let's change the sensor detection time. Let's add another 2 seconds, making it 4 seconds. Save that. So our SIF response time should go up to 16. So if we come and look at the overnight tasks, we'll run the overnight task now for SIF 001, SIF 123. That will then create a background task. Let's wait for the update IPL response time calculation to complete. It will then perform a reindex. They've now completed, so if we come back and refresh the window, we can see that our SIF response time is now 16 seconds. Ticket number 16867, implement cache busting for static files in JavaScript and cascading style sheets. In order to implement cache busting, we're going to edit a CSS file and a JavaScript file. These are the files that need to be loaded by the browser in order to be used by the user interface. In this scenario, we're going to start by changing the CSS file. We're going to modify the color of the toolbar, which currently is blue. Now let's add the instruction to change it to yellow. Now if we refresh the browser without doing a Control F5, the browser will pick up that there's been a change in the CSS file and display the changes to the user automatically. As we can see, the toolbar has changed in color. Now let's modify the JavaScript file. For this example, we're going to display a pop-up window that's going to display a message. This is a test. So we've added that to the JavaScript file. And now if we move to a different module, the browser will pick up the changes in the file and automatically upload the new ones. As we can see, we have a message box saying this is a test in a pop-up window without the user having to press Control F5. If we now go ahead and remove those two changes and we move back to Instrumented Systems, we can see that the browser is noticing the change and the pop-up window does no longer show up. And if we look at the toolbars have a blue color instead of the yellow.